YouTube, Awesome Writer here. Today's video we're going to be talking about the Power Rangers reboot. Again, I did a video about a week ago, depending on when this goes up, just talking about the anniversary and a little bit of its lackluster delivery and missed opportunities to promote the reboot. And it got me thinking about the reboot and the discussion around it as we head into a new year pretty soon. And I wanted to discuss my thoughts on how I think the reboot's going to do, what I think is going to happen, and the challenges it faces. I feel like a lot of people think that I'm just overly optimistic about it, which is funny because in everything else in my life, I could not be more of a pessimist. I just always assume the worst. And I'm not entirely optimistic about that, but I feel like I tend to want to think the best of what's going to happen with this. And also, I feel like I'm trying to see it from more of a middle ground perspective. When it comes to the conversation of whether the reboot will take off or like how it's going to be quality-wise, much like with all fan discourse now, there's like no nuance to the discussion. It's like everyone is like really tribal about it and they take one side or the other and it's just extreme. Either like, you know, Power Rangers can do it wrong, it's like Hasbro happy, and then the other one's like Hasbro's a villain, woke, 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 woke. And it's like, I'm trying to sit in the middle here, where I think Hasbro's done a lot of mishandling and stuff, but I also think that it's not as bad as people think, and I think that there's positive things to look forward to. But anyway, I feel like people think I'm too much of an apologist, but I'm really just trying to be more realistic and not cartoonishly against them or cartoonishly for them. But I want to talk about how I think it's going to go, because I'm being kind of realistic about it. I don't think that the chances are high of it being successful. Like, ideally, I would love for it to be successful. I would love for the reboot to take off, multiple seasons, maybe an animated show eventually. You know, the franchise can have multiple different avenues like Transformer does. Sometimes maybe have animated movies based off the comic stories like DC does. And, you know, maybe even a Rescue Bot style show for the kids. Whatever. I'd love to see that happen. You know, I'm hoping for the best in regards to that. But I think that there's a couple more realistic outcomes. I think that there's, in my opinion, this is just me guessing based on past experience watching other franchises and other shows do stuff like this. I think there's two outcomes that are equally likely that are kind of similar. But before I touch on those, I wanted to talk first about the main, like, two things, like uphill battles I think they faced. Number one being, of course, the public perception. We all know this. Power Rangers is generally looked down upon. It's very often, like, really often actually used as an example of lack of quality. Like, it's actually, I've noticed it a lot recently of people will come up with a way of like criticizing like the style or the acting or the presentation, and they'll use Power Rangers in a derogatory connotation. So while there is a lot of people that grew up with Power Rangers that are around the older fans' age but didn't stick with it, that have nostalgia memories and are like, yeah, Tommy was awesome or whatever, it's mostly looked down upon, and it's faced this uphill battle of that prejudice where you can't get people to appreciate anything it's done that's good for the most part in a bigger way, because they always just view it as that really crappy mmpr season 1. So that's an uphill battle it faces. Number two, I think the other challenge it faces is the current climate. It's pretty warm out there, no, but the current climate of like media in general, but superhero media in particular, as there is a lot of talk of oversaturation and fatigue. And I have my own thoughts on that. I do think there's a degree of fatigue, but I also think that fans' favorite thing about superhero media is rooting for its downfall, which I don't think is helpful. But there is, without question, a lot of superhero media, more so than ever. You know, setting aside other thoughts on things, it's without question that like Marvel overwhelmed people by making a lot more TV shows in addition to the movies, and that's, you know, not even including, you got DC doing their own thing with their hot mess. Then you have other shows like Invincible and The Boys and Gen V. I'm sure there's other ones I'm forgetting from other avenues as well, but like everyone wants a slice of the pie, and there's all kinds of superhero related media out there. And I think that like Power Rangers rebooting almost couldn't come at a more difficult time. They're already facing an uphill battle with other failed revivals, and like I said, that prejudice of looking down on Power Rangers, to have a superhero show coming out for a brand that's looked down upon during a time when you're oversaturated with superhero media is going to be like white noise. Because with that superhero oversaturation and fatigue, people are much more selective. They're probably going to only feel like watching a couple, and almost all of them are going to be better than Power Rangers. You know, you're definitely going to pick an episode of Gen V or Loki over that. So those are two major challenges that they face. I think that, again, I think part of the reason the reboot took so long is they were really worried about trying to figure out the best way to do it, because 2017 didn't do so well financially, and they were worried about doing it as a movie, and then the whole world changed where people are more selective about the movies. We're even seeing, you know, previous sure bets not do well at the box office, so I think that's why we're doing Netflix streaming, which is smart. But they already faced challenges there, but now that reboot has been delayed so long, they couldn't be aiming for a worst possible time, unless somehow there's a second renaissance by the time the reboot finally gets out. But that brings me to my two scenarios of what I think will likely happen. Again, I can't say for sure. This is just me speculating for fun. So for fun, this number one, first speculation is not necessarily fun. This, I think, is the most pessimistic outcome. I think the reboot will happen. I know there's a lot of people that think the reboot's not even going to get made. I do think there's a small chance that like whatever they're working on right now might get shelved, but I don't think that if it does, Power Rangers is dead forever. It's definitely a franchise where there's going to be some sort of reboot attempt at some point in the future, but I'm fairly certain whatever they're working on now will take shape at some point in the nearest future. But I think reboot, it's made, it goes for one season. I think it'll probably be pretty good. I think I'll probably like it because it's sounding like it's doing a lot of things I want. I might do well critically. I think a lot of the hardcore fans will probably dislike it. Their minds will remain firmly closed. Comment section filled with the word woke. But it'll only get one season. That's it. It won't do well enough to capture the audience because the thing is it needs to capture the casual audience. And then there'll be kind of a dormant-ish period, kind of like we have right now. And then when they come back, it will be MMPR only in some degree, whether it's an animated show or an MMPR revival or whatever. Now, that's the most pessimistic outcome. Now, number two, which I think is equally likely, is a little bit more optimistic for us getting a little bit more content. But I think this honestly might be the most likely outcome in a way, which is very similar. Again, it comes out, one season you got, it does decently. I probably like it. Again, fans' minds remain firmly closed. But it does decently, like in terms of numbers, because I think that there will be a level of curiosity. Like if they promote it right and it's on the front page of Netflix, I think you'll get enough casuals being like, oh my god, they did another Power Rangers reboot. And I think they'll get like a false surge. Not like a false, like it's not false, like people would watch it. But what I mean is it's not genuine, enduring interest. It's just that curiosity. And you'll get that initial kind of boost. And they'll be like, oh, it did well. And it'll get renewed for a second season. But then the second season will showcase that the audience just isn't retaining. And it will be canceled after that. And then dormant, MMPR only. And people always say like, will Hasbro sell it? I don't know, to be honest with you. I think regardless, I think there's a chance like this doesn't work out and Hasbro attempts to just do MMPR only. But hypothetically, if Hasbro ever sells it, I feel like if this reboot fails, I feel like if they ever sell it and whoever gets it again, I just feel like it's not impossible, but I think chances would be slim of them trying to reinvent it or do something new. I think that I don't know who they would sell it to, but let's just sell it to Company X or whatever. They'll likely also try to do something just MMPR if this fails, because MMPR-related stuff is the only proven sell. And I think that's unfortunate. I know this sounds very grim, but I'm trying to be realistic about it. And I'd love for it to take off. Again, it faces an uphill battle. I think that stranger things have happened, including Stranger Things. But like Cobra Kai, I always use that as an example, and that's a bit different because there certainly wasn't a lack of respect for Cobra Kai or anything like that. But I also certainly don't think that people saw a sequel series to Cobra Kai becoming a water cooler show that was like entering the mainstream. You know what I mean? Like Karate Kid's mainstream, but you know what I mean. It became one of those shows that like, you know, maybe it's not talked as much about right now, although they did announce the Karate Kid movie, so it's been talked about. But you know what I mean? I'm getting away from myself. It got talked about like on the level of, to a degree, certain shows like Lost or Game of Thrones for a hot minute in terms of like, it was in the public eye, like, holy crap, have you heard about this? So it's not impossible, it just faces an uphill battle. And the thing is they need to capture the casual audience. They need, like, the hardcore audience is too small. And if it's aiming higher, they gotta get a wider audience than just kids. They need the casual audience. They need new fans, and they need fans that like know of PR or grew up with it, but didn't stick with it, that are a larger net than the hardcore audience. And unfortunately, it's an uphill battle. Like I said, I think the most likely outcome is it might do decently from that false surge, as I've seen that happen with other things. You know, other shows will get like an initial popularity for one reason or another, and it might run a season or two after that, but then it just kind of falls off. I think another good example too is I think, and this isn't a knock on the quality of these movies or anything, but I think that both Captain Marvel and Aquaman, which grossed like $1 billion, got like a boost from circumstances. Like Captain Marvel was sandwiched between the two Avengers movies, so I think it got a boost contextually. And then I think Aquaman came out like around the superhero boom. Again, I really like the Aquaman movie, but I'm saying that people are always like, how the hell did that do $1 billion? And I think that's movies, but I think you know what I mean. Like that's why I think that there's a chance the first season might do well, because they'll get that curiosity audience boost, but you might not retain it. And that's unfortunate. I'll be really interested to see what happens. Right now, as of the time I'm recording this, we haven't heard a lot. I do think another reason that there could be, as a last point, kind of a icky point, I guess, for why we might see the first season at least do well, is it seems like they're going to try to do some sort of Jason David Frank tribute. As of this recording, there's rumors that they're going to make the main character the Green Ranger and name him after Tommy and do a version of that. And I could totally see them, which feels kind of slimy, doing marketing of like reboot honoring Jason David Frank with this character. And I could see people being like, you know, if they play those nostalgia strings on the heartstrings about Tommy, again, you get that initial boost, which might help the first season. But that's kind of the way I foresee it. You know, I think that it's got a chance of doing well for a second season, but I think that we possibly need to be prepared for a dormance and then just returning back to MMPR. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps, ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.